Get started in 1 minute. If everybody will take their seats, we'll go ahead and get started with the program. Yes, sir. So make sure I pronounce it right. Okay, guys, we want to get started with our panel discussion. We really think you're going to enjoy this. Hearing from these stakeholders that we've got today, and we really appreciate them taking their time from their busy schedules to be here. And the best, we're going to have a two-part. They're going to each speak for a little bit, talk about mental health from their perspective. But they've all agreed, I think the most important part about what they're about to do is they're going to open it up for y'all. They want to hear from everybody in this room. So we're going to allow enough time between this panel discussion and our next speaker, which will end the day, starting at 3 o'clock, and then we adjourn at 4 o'clock to give time to hear from y'all. So with that, first, let me introduce, I'm just going to go through each one of the panelists, and then they're going to come up and speak, and then we'll open up for questions. Mark Litvine, who's an individual living with mental illness. Give him a round of applause. Next on our panel is Joan Elder, the first Vice President, NAMI, Alabama, and family member. Next is Dr. Jacqueline Feldman, NAMI Associate Medical Director. And finally, from Jefferson County, Judge Stephen Wallace, Circuit Court Judge, the Criminal Division here in the 10th Judicial Circuit. So again, what we're going to do is each one of them are going to say a few words, and then after that we'll open up for questions. So with that, Mark.
Hey y'all, my name is Mark Litvine, and I am schizophrenic. I don't suffer today because I get a shot once a month of Invega Sustaina, 156 milligrams, and it's only by that medication and God's grace that I don't have to suffer, because for many years I did suffer. I grew up in Mountain Brook and started showing schizophrenia, signs of schizophrenia at the age of 22. Had a falling out with this girl. We were really close. And woke up one morning convinced that I was supposed to marry this girl, and the whole town was in on it. Then I was convinced that it was the whole state, and then I thought I was an international celebrity and all this stuff. Schizophrenia is really hard to describe, but, you know, for 5 years of my life, I didn't know what was real, and I didn't know what wasn't real. I was convinced that everyone was talking about me, all these conversations. I was in and out of jails, in and out of Mountain Brook Jail. I was in Brookwood Psych Ward. I was in Hillcrest 3 times. You know, I was convinced my family was making fun of me and talking about me and trying to get me to play this game to marry this girl. So I became very violent with my family and completely lost all sorts of control. And this went on for 5 years of my life, and I couldn't keep a job. I was in and out of working, and, you know, and during this time, I was also self-medicating with drugs and alcohol, which made me 10 times worse. I am an alcoholic and an addict. Today I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I've been that way since March 1st, 2013. Almost 4 years sober. But this went on for a really long time, you know, just thinking everything was about me. And honestly, I ended up in so many situations where it's only by God's grace that I'm alive here today, because of the situations I put myself in and my disease put me in, because I just had so many close calls. I really did. So it all ended up in a culmination of, you know, thinking this girl's family were having me followed, and all these cars were having me followed. And I called the girl's dad, who's an attorney and best friends with the DA, and thinking I was going to marry into his family, and he was having me followed and all this, and said something that sounded like, you know, a threat against his family. And then I ended up in Jefferson County Jail for 9 months with 2 felonies. And I was in Jefferson County Jail for 9 months and 1 month in Taylor Hardin. And that was a very miserable time for me. You know, just being in the system, being mentally ill. I was in the jail. I got jumped the very first night and got beat up for acting out because I thought it was all this game and I didn't know what was going on. And I remember when I first met Mr. Walsh, you know, and this man truly saved my life, because he never gave up on me, and he taught me to take my medication every day. And the first time I met him, I actually fired him. I thought he knew the girl's dad and was working for him and all this stuff. So I fired him, and he was there the next month. And Mr. Walsh would see me coming in and out with black eyes and split lips, and I got beaten so bad one time I had a cheek that was swelling up. And this is just the kind of environments. They put me in the mental health block in the jail, and I actually contracted the TB bacteria, but I don't have it today, only by God's grace, thank God. But Mr. Walsh he kept me in that jail and got me into Taylor Hardin. He got me on the waiting list and got me in there after 6 months, where they finally gave me medication. I didn't want to take the medication for several years. I had an eating disorder, and I was scared it would make me gain weight, but they were very nice to me, and they gave me the medication, a shot. And after about 2 weeks, I started to realize all this was in my head, and it all started to clear up. And finally, I was court-ordered. My felonies were dismissed. I pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity because I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't in my right mind. And I was court-ordered into the fellowship house, which also saved my life because they introduced me to the program, which got me sober, which I'm a very active member in a 12-step fellowship today, and I sponsor young men, many of which are mentally ill, which is an absolute blessing. But I was at the fellowship house. The courts let me go home March 5th of 2014, and I went to Miss Katie Abbott, our clinical director at the fellowship house, and I told her I wanted to start volunteering. And I do orientation packets on Wednesdays, and I do mentor group on Fridays. I did 10 orientation packets yesterday, Miss Katie. But life is completely different today. Honestly, if I have never gotten the help for my mental illness, I wouldn't be here today, which is why this is so important to talk about and I'm so passionate about. Today, I'm a certified recovery support specialist certified by the Alabama Department of Mental Health, and I train other CRSSs up in Lake Gunnersville. I'm an active member of ROSS, the Recovery Organization of Support Specialists, which is our peer-run organization that we're putting together right now of CRSSs. I'll be at the state capitol next week which I'm a part of the Council on Opiate Misuse and Addiction. So that's just absolutely incredible the way my life is today because I got treated for my mental illness. I say all that because none of this wouldn't happen if it wasn't for Mr. Walsh and treating my mental illness and God's grace, because there's so many people that don't make it. I used to wake up and have all this, shame and, embarrassment of everything I did and all this, but I slowly started to realize that I had the ability to help other people who were going through the same thing, and started to realize what I was capable of, what I could be capable of, and it gave me a lot of hope. And finally, this woman at the fellowship house, who I greatly admire, she told me, "Mark, today you live a life of purpose, and that makes all the difference in the world." And it really does, and that's why I'm so grateful to be able to do this today, because so the people that are coming behind me don't have to go through what I went through, God willing. Thank you.